So you deserve a man who thinks that you are too important to lose. So if you really want to get into a great relationship, which obviously is what I'm suggesting that you do, you really need to believe it. You need to believe that you deserve to have what it is that you want. And so I'm going to be talking today about a concept that I call sacred, right? It's obviously not a new concept. I didn't come up with this concept, but I'm going to be applying it. How can you apply this idea of being sacred to your own life so that you can make sure that you get into a relationship where you have a guy who feels like you are special, unique, different, amazing, exactly what he's looking for in his life, and somebody that absolutely doesn't want to let you go. So, hi, my name is Matthew Coast, and welcome to Commitment Connection. And so let's talk a little bit about this idea of being sacred. So our society teaches us a lot about how we're really no longer special. We're no longer sacred. There's lots of us. We're everywhere. You have to, do all these things in order to be enough. There's commercials out there. We don't have a lot of I was actually talking to a friend of mine today, and we're talking about this idea of having values, right? Having values kind of integrated into the foundation of who you are, and how our society doesn't really teach us that for the most part anymore. And what's happening now is a lot of people are getting sucked in to all the commercials, all the marketing, all the media, and we kind of get into this space where we're like trying to we believe in whatever the commercials are telling us, which a lot of the times is you need to do more, you need to be more, you need to, do all these things. And don't get me wrong, I do believe that it's incredibly valuable to become the best version of yourself and to continually grow and develop yourself into the best human being that you absolutely can be. However, it's also important that you realize that you are already sacred, right? You are already somebody. When you meet a man, you can absolutely be a blessing to him in his life and create a great connection. And most men, at least men used to kind of come from this space back in the day where they looked at women as sacred. They looked at women as kind of this amazing, beautiful, interesting, different, kind of strange, a little bit crazy, maybe a little bit interesting, right? They don't really understand them, but there's somebody that they should almost worship, right? And treat well and appreciate and love and care for. And our society's kind of shifted into this world of the hookup culture where people are just settling for random hookups with just about anybody, and we don't really appreciate each other as much anymore. We aren't really connecting with each other as much anymore. We don't really value each other as much anymore. And so you need to realize that you are sacred. In fact, you're a woman, a life giver, the holder of emotion and magic and grace and beauty. And my suggestion is that you own that so that you can make sure that you end up in a really great relationship where a guy actually believes that and thinks that about you as well. There's a concept that I've talked about before on here called the law of belief transference. And this law states that whoever believes something with more certainty than the other person will end up transferring that belief that they have to the other person. And so if you believe that you don't deserve a great relationship, you don't believe that you're really worthy of a great guy, and you end up meeting a great guy, no matter how much he really likes you and he thinks that you're great and he appreciates you and he values you, if you're coming from that space of not believing it yourself, you'll end up transferring that belief over to him so that he doesn't believe it as well. And then next thing you know, he's going to be pulling away. He's going to be going cold on you. He's going to be telling you things like he's not really sure. He's confused. He doesn't know what he wants, and all kinds of things like that. And that's absolutely what you don't want and what I want to make sure that you avoid. Let's talk about what this means, right? What does being sacred mean? So here are some things that I think that you should make sacred for yourself. One is make your attention sacred. Make access to you sacred. Make emotional intimacy with you sacred. Make access to your body sacred. So don't put photos on social media. Don't send naked photos to men. That's part of making your body sacred. Don't just sleep around with guys because you're sacred, right? Don't next one is make physical intimacy sacred, which is what I was just talking about. Don't sleep around. Don't sleep with a guy without him earning it first. And we'll talk a little bit here in a minute about what that means by him earning it. Make who you are sacred. So how do you do all of this? How do you create this kind of sacred thing? And one of the biggest concepts that you need to think about is this idea of making him work for it. So there's something that I call the investment principle. And the investment principle, what it states is that the more a man invests in you, the more that he invests in you from his time, energy, effort, emotions, and anything. A lot of times when I talk about investment, women will start talking about like money, right? Which is also a type of investment, but really what you want is emotional investment. You want time investment. You want him to sit around and think about you and contact you and talk to you and open himself up and be vulnerable around you, because when he starts doing those things, when he starts investing in you, he starts feeling like you're too important to him in order to lose, right? There's something called the sunk cost fallacy out there, which actually comes from investing. And the sunk cost fallacy, what it states is that, the more somebody puts into something, the more they value something, right? And so you want him to value you really highly. That's what we're talking about in being sacred, right? Sacred is something that you really value. It's something that you put up here, right? It's something that's really important to you. And, there's lots of different things that people have that are sacred. Sometimes people make time sacred. Sometimes people make objects sacred. Sometimes people make people sacred. Sometimes people make areas that they go to and hang out in sacred. And so my suggestion is that you make yourself sacred. And so how do you do that? Well, there's kind of the one aspect, which is you making him work for it, which is what I'm talking about, which is what I was talking about before. Don't just give yourself away to a guy because you feel it for him. We get so many women who come to us and they're like, oh, I've been seeing this guy and I really felt it for him, but I didn't want to ruin anything by asking him the wrong questions, because I know that guy. This is what I hear all the time. I know that guys are scared of talking about commitment, and I know that guys are scared of talking about feelings and what they're looking for and all of those things. And let me tell you, the only guys that are scared of talking about commitment are guys who are scared of how you're going to react when they tell you what they're actually looking for. And so most guys are actually pretty open about what they're looking for and what they want, especially a guy that's actually looking for a commitment and looking for a relationship and looking to get married or have a great, amazing relationship at some point in the future. And so don't get too freaked out about asking him questions like that. Don't be afraid of asking him what he's looking for, because those will indicate whether you should actually be with this guy or not. And so what I was talking about before was how I'm like running off on tangents here. What I was talking about before was how a lot of women come to us and they'll end up hooking up with a guy and they won't ask him those questions. And then next thing you know, they'll end up in a situation where they're in a friend with benefits situation because they never asked the guy what he was looking for. They never stopped to make sure that they're getting into a good situation where they're getting exclusivity, where he was actually looking for a commitment, where he's looking for something down the road. And so they end up in the situation where by the way, if you don't ever talk to a guy about whether you're exclusive or not, you can just assume that you're not until you do. And so for a lot of these women end up in these friend with benefits situations, and then they're trying to go from that place where they've already put themselves down lower, right? Because most guys, if they hook up with you and they hook up with you fast and you're not requiring these things to happen in order for that to occur, then they usually will slot you, many times they'll slot you into a different category. And there's actually been studies that have been done on this, where the studies have determined that only when somebody is trying to go from a friend with benefits casual situationship into a committed relationship, that only 1 in 7 to 1 in 9 times does it actually make it there. And so you want to make sure that you're setting yourself up from the very beginning to be in the kind of relationship that you want to be. If you just want a friend with benefits situation, don't be surprised when you end up catching feelings for him and then wanting something more, but he doesn't want something more with you. And that's the worst kind of situation that you can be in. If you are in that situation, there is a possibility for you. You really have to believe that you're valuable enough to have the relationship that you want. And like I said, because of the belief of the law of belief transference, if you don't believe that, then he's not going to believe it either. And so you have to change the way that you think about yourself, change what you say to yourself. So a lot of women will think to themselves and feel and have certainty around this idea that they're not really good enough, that they're not really worth it, that men don't like them, that they're never going to find a man who wants to be with them, that men don't want commitment, that men only want to hook up, that they have to give in to the hookup culture because that's what men just want right now. And you need to change all of those beliefs, right? If you have some of those beliefs are going to stop you from actually getting into the kind of relationship that you want. And it's going to end up making you settle for something that's not worthy of who you are. And so you want to start believing things like, I'm lovable, I'm valuable, I'm beautiful, I'm a masterpiece, I'm the type of woman that men want to be with. Men want to chase me. Men want a commitment with me. Men are, going to value me and cherish me and love me, right? And not all men are going to do that. However, you need to make sure that you set yourself up for the best possible situation. And if they aren't doing that, then you need to communicate that 3 different things. And we're going to be talking about those 3 things here in just a minute. All right. So actively work to grow and become a better version of yourself. This is part of believing that you're sacred and creating a sacred space for yourself, right? You want to believe that you're worthy and that you're deserving and that you're enough. And you also want to develop and grow yourself and become a better version of yourself and learn how to better connect with men and get better at something. Confidence actually comes from competence. So the better that you can get at something, the more confident you'll be in that space. And so one of the ways that you do that with this is learning how to better communicate your value, right? When you learn how to communicate your value, you'll be a lot more confident when you actually do communicate your value because you've practiced it, you've thought about it, you've learned how to do it. And so you'll be a lot more confident in doing it. And so there's 3 different types of ways to communicate your value to a man. The first one is through standards. And standards are communicating things like, 1, your preferences, things that you like and things that you don't like. That's setting a standard. Another way to set standards is to talk about things that you think are attractive. So if you're talking to a guy and you're like, yeah, I really think it's attractive when guys, act like gentlemen and open doors for me and, pull out my chair and, make me feel protected and loved and cared for, or whatever it is that you're looking for a guy to do, just communicating what your standard is, saying what you think is attractive. Or if he's doing it, for instance, let's say he opens a door for you and you say, wow, that was really attractive. I really like that. Right. And just communicating that you think that something that he's doing is attractive, and that's actually setting a standard. Right. And he's going to hear that. He's going to hear you say something like that to him. And then he's going to want to do it again and again and again and again, because he's thinking, okay, I'm winning with her. Right. Which is what men want to do. They want to make you happy and they want to win with you. And if he feels like he can do that with you and you're leading him to doing things that make him win and that make you happy, then he's going to want to continue to do those things. He's going to feel like he's winning with you. He's going to want to go on more dates with you because he thinks he's having a great time. He's connecting with you. He likes you. The second way to communicate your value is to communicate your boundaries. And we've talked a lot about boundaries in other videos. For a real quick recap, of it, the way that you communicate boundaries is, let's say that he's pushing your boundaries, which is something that guys do all the time, and they're going to do all the time because that's kind of one of their jobs, is to see where the boundaries lie with you. And so what he might end up doing is, let's say that he tries to like do something with you that you aren't really ready for yet. For instance, instead of just outright rejecting him, which is what a lot of women do, and they're like, no, I'm not doing that, I'm not interested, which can a lot of times make a guy think that you're actually rejecting him, right? There's two types of rejections. One's a hard rejection, the other one's a soft rejection. A hard rejection is when you are like, no, I'm not interested, I don't want to do that. A soft rejection is like, not yet. You're interested, but not yet. Right? I'm not, it's kind of a thought process of communicating, like, if you play your cards right, maybe at some point I'll be interested in that. And so you want to lead him on. If you're using a boundary, what you do is you tell him what it is that you want, right? Like, I love, or tell him the things that you like about him or something like that, right? So it's either telling him what you want or telling things that you like about him. So you might say, I'd love to do that in the future. That's telling him what you want. If you're telling him things that you like about him, you might say, I really love hanging out and talking to you and communicating with you. And then you say your boundaries. So you say, maybe, so let's say you're doing it from the beginning. So you say, maybe I'd like to do that. That sounds like it would be really fun sometime in the future. However, I'm not quite ready for that right now. I'd rather we get to know each other a little bit better first. Does that sound all right? And so the third part of the boundary is asking a question and making sure that he agrees to it, because then if he agrees to it, then he's caught into doing that, right? He's set up in a position where he needs to do that. And if he doesn't do that, then he actually, then that he's intentionally breaking your boundaries. And you can go on to number 3, which is the third way of communicating your boundaries, which is walking away. And so when you walk away, it's not necessarily forever, right? You can walk away from a situation, but still be interested if he's willing to put in the energy and the effort in order to win you back. But if he's not willing to put in the energy and the effort in order to win you back, then you might be in a space where you're like, okay, we're not going to do this anymore. And so you walk away. So let's say that he does something, right, that you really don't like. And so walking away is usually for a situation that you really don't like. So let's say that, he flirts with another girl, right? You guys are out and he flirts with another girl, or he says something, or he does something that's a little bit over the line, right? Just a little bit over the line. I mean, if it's like really intentional, like he walks away from you and starts flirting with a girl on the other side of the room, that might be a problem. But if a waitress comes over and he just says, something cute and flirty or whatever, and you're not really comfortable with that, you could, end up walking away from that situation, or you could set a boundary depending on how bad it is, right? And if you walk away, what you want to do is wait until he communicates with you, he contacts you, and have some kind of procedure for what you want in order for him to re-enter your life, which might be an apology. It might be him being like, hey, I'm not going to do that again, and being really serious with you. It might be that, it's too much and you're not willing to accept anything like that back into your life. Okay, and then another way of making yourself sacred is by positioning yourself in value. And one of the ways that you do this is to get into abundance. It's something that I call abundance, the abundance principle, which basically what it is what abundance is having options, right? Having options and connections so that you're not coming from a space of being needy and clingy and desperate. And so what happens with a lot of the women who come to us initially is that they will be in a space where they're just dating one guy, right? And the guy's not even that serious about her, but she's like totally already like, okay, I'm just dating this one guy. And some women do this on the first contact, right? So if you just start talking to each other, or you just go on one date, they're like, okay, this is the only guy that I'm going to date. And if I date anybody else, it feels like I'm cheating. Well, my suggestion is that you date multiple people at a time. Don't sleep with any of them. Don't sleep with any of them. Just don't date multiple people at a time, so that you're not coming from a space of, I need it to work out with this one woman or this one guy or else, right? If you're coming from the space of it has to work with this one guy, then you're going to be a lot more attached and invested in it working with this one guy. And if he does something that maybe normally would be against your boundaries or against what you actually want, you might walk away. But since this is the only guy, you're like, well, I'm going to have to try to manipulate and force and cajole and try to, push it to work with him, which is a really bad situation to be in. And instead, you want him to be trying to convince you that you are the right woman for him and that you should date him instead of any other guy. And the best way to do that is by putting yourself into a world of abundance. Talk to the women in our community about this. Lots of women have done this after I've suggested it to them, and it's completely changed their lives. It's completely changed their dating, because all of a sudden it's not this one guy, it's which one of these guys is going to step up and start pursuing me and start trying to create the relationship that I want to have with them. And so what you do is you shine the light, right? You shine the light on the type of relationship that you want to have, and then you let him lead you to the promised land, right? You let him lead you to creating that relationship that you want. So that's getting into abundance. The second part of positioning yourself in value is making sure that you take advantage of everything that you possibly can. There was a woman on our last live stream who was talking about how there's more men in the world than there are women. And so it's harder for women because there's more men. Well, there are billions of people on this planet, let me tell you. And there are lots of places that you can go where there are more men than there are women, and men tend to try to do things more. They're trying to step up their game more in order to be with the women, right? And that are around that area. And so my suggestion to you is whatever you need to do to put yourself in the best position possible. So if that's, it depending on how serious you are about this, right? If that means that you are in a rural town and you, in order to have abundance and be around guys that don't all know each other, right? You might have to go to a bigger town in order to start dating there, or, doing something where you're putting yourself into a place where men tend to value women more, right? So some cities, right? Like, especially the cities where there are more men than there are women, places like Denver, places like San Diego, we were talking about with one of my friends earlier. I'm sure there's a lot of other places. Just look up the places where there is a lot of competition for women, and you can, go to those kinds of places if you want to. Obviously, it can take a lot if you, work somewhere and you can't up and move or whatever, or whatever. But it's not about this one thing, right? It's about doing it as much as you can. If you can't meet a whole bunch of guys because of whatever situation you're in, in person, you can also do online dating. I know a lot of women. I had a client not too long ago who was like totally against online dating. She's like, I'm not going to date online. And, I will never do that. It's horrible. Online dating sucks. And, and there are a lot of challenges with online dating for both men and for women. However, it can quickly put you into a place of abundance, and you can quickly start meeting and getting connected with other guys and start feeling like you're less and less attached to making things happen with one guy if you build that abundance with online dating or whatever, right? And so you just want to figure out what are the best ways to position myself so that I can have the highest advantage in my dating life. And just put yourself into that situation, assuming that you're single and not in a relationship already. So the next one is stop judging yourself. And so what you want to do is start learning to fully accept yourself. So this is another piece of being sacred and believing that you're sacred, is stop judging yourself. Learn to fully accept yourself, especially the dark parts. So the parts that you're ashamed of, the parts that you're scared of, the parts that you think are gross or nasty or the worst parts of yourself, accept those. And there's also another side, which is kind of the light side, right? Learning to love the light side of yourself, the parts where, and you might say to yourself, well, why wouldn't I love the light parts of myself, the best parts of myself, the most excellent parts of myself? Well, a lot of people kind of deny those things. I've been going to a lot of Tony Robbins events over the last 8 months or so. And one of the things that I noticed that people do at those events is they will start talking to Tony and they will say things like, Tony, you did this. You are the one that created all these changes for me in my life, right? And to a certain extent, yeah, he gave them information and he gave them tools and resources to help them do it, but they did it, right? You did it, right? You have those amazing parts of yourself. And the way that you find out which amazing parts of yourself that you're not fully accepting and fully embracing is to look around you and look at people that you really admire and see what qualities they have and see which qualities they have that you admire. And then take those qualities on and say, how do I have those qualities as well? And am I not really fully embracing those qualities? I'm going to be putting a program together about how to really love yourself and find those parts and accept those parts at some point here, hopefully in the near future. So just watch out for that. And so the next part of really believing that you're sacred and thinking that you're sacred is changing the questions that you ask yourself. So the way, whatever you ask yourself, whatever questions you ask yourself, you will start focusing on that thing, right? And whatever you focus on, you start to feel, and whatever you feel, you end up receiving. And so if you change your questions, you can change how you experience your life and how much you love your life and how much you enjoy your life and what you experience in your life. And so here are some questions that you might want to ask yourself. And the main question here is, what if? And so ask yourself, what if I am enough? What if I am deserving? What if I am blessed? What if I am exactly what a great man is looking for? What if I am whole? What if I am beautiful? What if I am worthy? What if I am in control? What if I have the power? What if I am on the right path? What if I am desirable? What if I am worth more? And so make a study of these questions if you want to. I'll throw these questions in the description here later. And, ask yourself at least one of those questions every day and just repeat it over and over again. And just, think about it. Think about what if you are deserving? What if you're enough? What if you're blessed? What if you're exactly what a great man is looking for? And sometimes when I talk about this idea of being enough, women will talk about, well, I'm not enough for this one guy, right? And we're talking about switching your mindset here from I'm trying to make everything work with this one guy to I am sacred, I am enough. And if this guy doesn't see that, then he's putting himself out of the competition for who is going to end up winning me in the end. And so you want to make sure that you're thinking about it and changing your mindset and not making it about a guy. Instead, making it about the relationship. What if you are enough for that relationship that you want to get in? And if you're enough, then what does that mean? What does that mean for you? And what could that mean for you? What if you're enough? What if you're deserving? What if you really do have the power? What if you really do have more control than you really think that you do? What if you're worth more than what you've been settling for up until this point in your life, with your relationships, with the men that you've been dating, with everything that you've been doing? What if you're worth more? I'm just going to do a real quick recap. So we're talking about being sacred, making sure that your attention is sacred, your access is sacred, your time is sacred, your emotional intimacy is sacred, access to your body is sacred, physical intimacy is sacred, who you are is sacred. And so make him work for it. Believe that you're valuable enough to have the relationship you want. Change what you say to yourself. Actively work to grow and become a better version of yourself. Position yourself in value. Stop judging yourself and change the way that you talk to yourself, what questions you ask yourself on a daily basis, and start focusing on the answers to questions of what if. What if I'm deserving? What if I'm blessed? What if I have grace running through me? What if I have the power? What if I am in control? What if I am worth more than what I've been settling for right now in my life?